So for each of you, what is the single most exciting door that virtual reality has opened for you as creators?
Storytelling. I think giving us the incentive to try different things in terms of how we tell stories. For example, in Edge of Nowhere, we have hallucinations that occur where we actually put you in the middle of the story and surround you with images and animations that make you feel like you really are much more engaged, and that the characters are talking to you and not necessarily the character who is the protagonist in the story.
I would totally agree with that. I was going to say that, but also I'll say something else. I guess the sense of place, like, again, I've only made one VR game, so I'm going to reference my game. You know, the fantasy of being an astronaut is like everyone can kind of get down with that, right? It's kind of, no pun intended, it's universal. And, you know, I look at, you know, we made Adrift 2D also, and I just don't know if I would have ever been able to make this game and have it feel so real, you know, even though it's not real, but it just, it's very different. Like, our 2D game is very good, and it's immersive and it's wonderful and all that, but like the enhancement of the experience in VR, it's more than just being immersed, and it's really hard to explain that to people who've never tried it or seen VR, but it's got a magic that all of the big advancement in games have had over the years that you can't kind of, it's just weird with VR because it's hard to quantify it. It's just, I mean, it sounds kind of stupid, but it's just magic.
I think the reason I got into games, and a lot of game makers get into games, is to create alternate universes, to create worlds that people truly believe in, and that's true in movies as well. Star Wars was what got me interested in making worlds. I ended up in games as opposed to film, but filmmakers are really excited about making worlds. The problem with making worlds through a screen is they don't actually ever become believable. They're beautiful, we love them, we want Star Wars characters and everything else. We don't actually feel like we're in Star Wars. Climbing a mountain would be a very frightening thing for the vast majority of the world that aren't mountain climbers. I think Cliffhanger, the movie, probably the opening scene, that horrible, Stallone, whatever. That movie did the best job of scaring the living daylights out of you about the height of climbing a mountain. The climbing game from Crytek, takes it to a whole nother level by putting you in VR. People start to play that game, and if they have a fear of heights, they have a really hard time playing it because of the fear of heights. People with fear of heights, they watch Cliffhanger and they're like, okay, I get it. I don't like mountains, but I'm fine watching it. They're not fine playing Climb because they believe it. VR puts you in the world, and that gives you a whole new ability to create an attachment to the world.
Right, when you play the Climb, it's terrifying. I mean, it's terrifying. I did this Everest thing a couple months ago on the Vive in a hotel suite in Vegas, and I know I'm standing on a floor that has carpet on it. I could not get my body to make the first step and walk across this rope bridge. I could not do it. I'm terrified of heights. And, you know, it's insane how it makes you feel that way. But if you look at, like, I forget what Call of Duty it is, but the level with the ice picks, and you're in the beginning you're kind of climbing up. It's just that you can't compare what it is. It's totally different. You
get the fiction.
Yeah.
You're climbing a mountain,
Yeah,
but you don't feel the fiction.
Right.
You don't fundamentally feel it. Sony did, I forgot the name of the tightrope movie that they did between the two Twin Towers.
The Walk.
The Walk, right.
Yeah.
They did a Walk VR experience.
Also terrifying.
Yeah, people were like, I just can't do this.
Yeah.
It's like there's no game where you're like, I can't do the ice climbing, I'm afraid of heights. But in VR, that actually happens.
But like, if you can take that and imagine Lara Croft like going across the rope, like kind of shimmying across it, and like that's just the next level where we are now.
And so it's not just fears, like your emotional attachment to a character when they look you straight in the eye, regardless of where your head is, and follow you around the room, is very different than the emotional attachment through dead eyes that are looking straight into the camera and don't have any idea who's out there. Everything changes and becomes far more real in VR, and this gives us an ability to take the consumer, to take gamers, places they've never been, and make them truly believe it. And that's what sucked me into VR, and I think it's what sucks a lot of game developers into VR is the ability to really get the player that they're making the game for to feel it.
So, considering that new level of immersion, to get political for 1 second, do you worry at all about another like video game witch hunt? If some opportunistic sensationalist politician wants to like talk about murder simulators and what kids are doing in VR, has that even occurred to you yet?
It's almost inevitable, right? I've written comic books, made video games, I listen to heavy metal. I've been through this so many times, like it's just, but like all other medium, there is too much. There is using it in a wrong way. Certainly Oculus is a curated store. We're not going to allow porn. We're not going to allow extreme violence. We're not going to allow racism. We're not going to allow, you can think of Facebook's terms of service.
Sure.
Like, we're not going to allow that stuff out there. But even, from a filmmaker's perspective or a game maker's perspective, what might have been a 6 out of 10 in a horror movie is like a 10 out of 10 in a VR game. So you have to tone down your jump scares. You have to tone down things that you're doing and just be cognizant of the fact that it is that believable and it is that real.